What if there was an operating system that you could download that would run in the back of your mind but would have a really positive impact on improving your communication skills? I'm Telana Simpson, and let's talk communication. Today I want to share with you some beliefs around communication and getting our message across to another person that helps to make communication much more effective. These ideas come from the presuppositions of the cognitive behavioral science called Neuro Linguistic Programming, or NLP. These assumptions are actually the grounding on which NLP rests that allows it to be so effective in changing human behavior. Why it is so useful to explore these ideas is they are the beliefs or the filters through which we interpret the information that is coming to us. So we have a way as human beings of having a filter system that influences the way we perceive what is going on around us. Those filters are based on our beliefs, the meanings we give to things, the intentions we have, the experiences we've got, the emotions we're experiencing in that moment. So all of those things kind of influence the way we perceive the moment. And all of those are developed from our conditioning, the way we were brought up, the experiences we were exposed to as we grew up and developed our set of filters. So there are a few filters that are key in understanding communication that unlock a much different experience in relating to people and getting our message across and understanding them as well. These beliefs or assumptions or presuppositions are like the operating system that functions in the back of our mind, very similar to how Windows would operate on the background of your computer. So some of these presuppositions in NLP include ideas like it's never too late to have a happy childhood. The map is not the territory. Behind every behavior is a positive intention. Energy flows where attention goes as governed by intention. Today, though, I want to focus just on a few of these very interesting and useful presuppositions in NLP that are related only to communicating and relating because they have such an impact on improving our ability to communicate. So let's start with the first one. We cannot not communicate. I find this idea quite interesting because it means that every single moment of every single day we are communicating. Whether you're talking or writing or speaking or listening, everything that you're doing is a form of communication. Even when you don't respond to an email or an SMS or to a comment someone has or makes towards you, that is still a form of communication. You are still communicating something by being quiet. So the first idea to keep in mind is that we cannot not communicate. Another idea that I find very, very useful is this one, which says, the meaning of my communication lies in the response that I get back. In other words, we never know what we have communicated until we get a response back from that person. Their response allows us to understand how they understood what we actually said. It is then gives us the choice and the opportunity to always correct or change our communication, because if we're always listening for what is the response from someone else, how did they understand or interpret what we said, we always then can be listening for that intentionally and such, look for the opportunities where misinterpretation or misunderstanding has happened and then correct or change our communication in order to achieve greater understanding and greater understanding. So the meaning of our communication lies in the response that we get. Gives us 100% responsibility in our communication, because we're then always listening for how did this person understand what I said? And how can I then change my communication to make sure that we're on the same page with my intention of what I wanted to communicate? Another presupposition from the field of Neuro Linguistic Programming is the person who sets the frame controls the game. Or said in another way, the person who sets the frame or paradigm of communication will control the actual communication process. Now this is great, and we've explored a lot about how to set frames, the pre-framing, post-framing kind of skill in communication in the previous episode, episode 5. So just wanted to just touch point again here that it's so useful in understanding this, because then up front, when you're trying to create a certain atmosphere or get a message across, just thinking a bit about how you're going to frame it, what paradigms you need to set around this will help your communication land better in terms of the other person and improve understanding. So often in communicating also we come to dead ends, deadlocks where we just seem to not be getting anywhere. And often what is happening in that moment is there is a lack of rapport between us and the other person. So the idea to understand here in terms of communication is whenever there is resistance, there is a lack of rapport. In other words, somehow you've fallen out of sync with that person. Something has happened that allows us to not be on the same wavelength anymore as that person, or in rapport as the skill is termed. This is useful to understand that whenever we get resistance to trying to get our message across, or to build a relationship, or move a project forward, or do anything, if there's some kind of resistance, the first place that we can go to then is to check, are we in rapport with this person? And then we can, if we're not, that's where we get to start, is trying to develop rapport again, because that is the building block, the starting place to then move on to improving the communication. So wherever there is a resistance, there is a lack of rapport, and we can go back to that place to then move forward. Another idea to think about is that the person with the most flexibility will have the most influence in a system. So if you think about it, this is about if you're really rigid, like a tree that is very rigid and then experiences a storm, if it's not able to move with what's going on, it's more likely to break during that really strong winds. Whereas a tree that is much more flexible, that can bend with the prevailing winds, is more likely to be able to withstand that storm and come out on the other side still intact. Similar to being in a system where especially there's a lot of people, or there's a lot of very dynamic kind of system where the communication is key for everyone to keep up to speed, the person with the most flexibility will end up having the most influence in that system. In other words, if you need to get your message across to a number of different people, everyone has a different way of interpreting from their set of filters what it is that you're saying. If you can adapt your style of communication to the different styles sitting around the table, you're more likely to get your message across to everyone around that table, and hence influence the outcome or the process or where that team is going. So the person with the most flexibility has the most influence, because they are able to adjust their style to what's going on and not just be stuck in one way of doing things. You also have a lot more options if you're a lot more flexible in choice, and that always is useful, having choice and options to do it. It kind of links also to the other idea that the meaning of your communication is the response you get. Because if you have more flexibilities, when you get the response back and realize that this person is misunderstood, you can then also from their response work out their style of communicating to then adapt your style to improve your ability to get the message across. And the last idea that I think I'll share just for today in relation to this is there is no such thing as failure, there is only feedback. And for me, this really touches on communication, is when there is a misunderstanding or communication is breaking down, it doesn't mean that everything has failed. It just gives you feedback to understand that something is not working in this process. And hence, with all the other ideas, you then can look at, do we need to build more rapport? Am I not being flexible enough in my communication style to get across? Am I not listening to how this person is replying to understand if we're understanding each other and moving forward? So there is no such thing as failure. There's only feedback. Because also, if you think about it, when we get something wrong, all that is information that helps us learn how to get it right the next time. So With that, I hope you enjoy exploring more about your communication ability and understanding that if there's no such thing as failure, only feedback, then if you have any difficulties, it's just a learning opportunity that will allow you to then develop your skill and have more influence on those around you. I'm Telana Simpson, and this has been Let's Talk Communication. For more details, please find my website, which is talkcommunication.innercoaching.co.za, or you can tweet me on Telana, which is Telana. I'd love to hear from you and any suggestions on what you'd like to learn more about in terms of communication and relationships. So do let me know, and otherwise have a great week and see you next time.